My coworker took credit for everything I built, and the company tried to charge me $1,200. When the director demanded the core data, I said, "Ask the project owner." "Noah, this is the company's disciplinary decision." Karen Price from Human Resources placed a sheet of paper on my desk hard enough to make the keyboards around me fall silent. I looked down. Notice of confidentiality violation. The company demanded reimbursement of $1,200 in alleged losses, suspended my quarterly performance bonus, and planned to circulate a written reprimand to department leadership. What confidential information did I disclose? I asked. Karen avoided my eyes. The details are in the report. Across the aisle, Tyler Reed stood. His voice was measured to carry through half the open office. "Noah, don't take your frustration out on Karen. The company investigated. If they disciplined you, they had a reason." A reason? I almost laughed. 3 months earlier, Tyler had been assigned as project manager for the largest analytics deployment our division had attempted. He could not write a coherent requirements document. I organized the logic, designed the architecture, optimized the workflow, and built the predictive model. I was the one who worked until 3 a.m, visited 6 client sites, and answered every hostile question during technical reviews. What did Tyler do? He presented my slide deck once, then he removed my name from the title page and replaced it with his own. Our director, Mark Henderson, knew. During the first design review, Mark asked who built the anomaly detection model. Tyler answered, "Noah and I developed it together." 6 words turned 3 months of my work into Tyler's participation. I stayed quiet because Tyler promised that if the project succeeded, he would recommend me for deputy technical lead. He said names on slides were less important than team success. I believed him. "I want the specific allegation," I told Karen. She glanced toward Tyler. He answered for her. "Last Wednesday, you showed the client our internal data logic without authorization." I remembered the meeting. Tyler sent me to deliver a technical appendix. The client's lead architect, George Wilson, noticed the proposed model did not align with their legacy environment. I explained the design and demonstrated the calculation method so we could identify the compatibility gap before deployment that was not leaking information. It was technical work required by the contract. The model was classified as internal confidential, Tyler recited. "You exposed lower-level logic to client personnel without approval. The company is trying to teach you to be more careful." He could not meet my eyes. Karen spoke quietly. "You may appeal, but we need your acknowledgement by the end of the day. Signing doesn't necessarily mean you agree. It only confirms receipt." I read the amount again. My salary was $72,000 a year. After taxes, insurance, and rent, $1,200 was not a lesson. It was most of a month's remaining income. The suspended bonus was worse. Coworkers pretended to type while watching from the corners of their eyes. Some looked pleased. A few looked sympathetic. Most looked grateful that the paper was on my desk instead of theirs. I did not sign. I folded the notice and put it in my drawer. As I walked out, Tyler said behind me, "See? This attitude is the problem." In the hallway, I met Mark carrying a large coffee. "About the discipline," he said, clearing his throat, "I can't interfere with HR. You did exercise poor judgment. Learn from it." Learn from it. I had earned top performance ratings for 2 consecutive quarters. The client had praised my work by name. I had repaired production failures at 3 a.m. so Tyler could announce a successful launch at 9. Now I was supposed to learn caution. Who wrote the data model design document? I asked. Mark's expression shifted, then smoothed. Authorship isn't the issue. Policy is. You showed internal logic externally. Deal with the immediate problem instead of overthinking it. He walked away before I could answer. My phone vibrated. A junior engineer named Evan had sent, I heard. "This is ridiculous. Are you okay?" I opened the company's internal social feed and saw Tyler's post from the previous night. It showed a project schedule with every major milestone labeled Tyler Reed owner. Requirements analysis, architecture, core algorithm, data model, all his. My name appeared once in tiny print under supporting team. When I returned to my desk, Tyler was laughing with two coworkers. Karen needs that signature today, he said. Don't take it personally. Everyone makes mistakes. Can you explain the model to the client without me? I asked. The office became still, his smile froze. What is that supposed to mean? We built the project together. Are you trying to claim everything? I sat down and returned to my code.at3. Mark posted in the project channel. The project is entering a critical phase. Everyone must focus on assigned responsibilities and avoid disruption from outside factors. I was the outside factor. 5 minutes later, Tyler replied, understood. The core module is complete, and my team will ensure delivery. The core module he claimed had been committed by me at 11:03 the night before. When Tyler merged the branch that morning, he used a squash operation that listed himself as the author. The repository still preserved the original history, but most executives would never look that deeply. A project coordinator messaged me privately. Don't post anything emotional in the group. This account is too important. If the repayment is difficult, I can ask whether payroll will arrange installments, but you need to sign. At 4:10, Mark's assistant summoned me. Mark was on the phone when I entered his glass office. The data is the key, he said quietly. Have him write the complete logic. Don't worry, I've handled the personnel issue. He ended the call when he saw me. Close the door. I remained standing. How many times have you met George Wilson? He asked. 3. Requirements, design review, and last Wednesday's appendix delivery. What did you show him last week? The model's design logic. He asked whether it would integrate with their existing system, and I explained the calculation. Mark studied me, then smiled. Do you realize you're the only person here who understands the full chain? I said nothing. He walked to the window. The client wants the complete derivation for the underlying data. You wrote the code and documentation. Prepare a clear package and email it directly to me. I have a client meeting tonight. No, please. No acknowledgement of the accusation. No mention of the $1,200 demand. Who is the official owner of the module? I asked. His smile vanished. Why does that matter? The assignment sheet names Tyler. Under our process, I should send materials to the owner for consolidation. You're lecturing me about process? Company process should be followed. Especially now. I've been accused of mishandling confidential information. If I send core data outside the approved chain, the company may call that another violation. Mark set his coffee down too hard. Are you trying to challenge me? I'm complying with policy. The client's deadline matters more than your attitude. If the project is delayed, will you accept responsibility? Tyler is the owner. He presented the model, managed the work, and received credit. He should be able to prepare the package. Mark's eyelid twitched. He finally heard what I was saying. Tyler could own the title or admit he did not own the work. You have a problem with the discipline, Mark said. No. Then prepare the materials. I'll support Tyler through the official process. Ask him for the package. I turned toward the door. Stop, Mark said. I paused. You understand this project determines our entire division's annual performance? Think about the consequences of withholding data. I'm not withholding anything. The technical documentation is in the approved repository. Tyler merged it this morning. He has access. I left. A message from Tyler appeared before I reached my desk. Mark says you told him to ask me for the data. What are you doing? I did not reply. Tyler sent 2 more messages. You caused this problem. Don't dump it on me. You designed the model, and you're the only one who can answer the client's questions. Prepare the package now. I stared at the screen without typing. Linda, a senior analyst beside me, leaned closer. Don't make yourself a target. When directors tell you to do something, do it. The company will always win a fight like this. You're right, I said. Then I continued working on a separate assigned task. By 7, most employees had left. Tyler remained, moving between Mark's office and his own desk. I heard fragments of phone calls. Noah isn't cooperating. He has a personal grudge. I'm trying to protect the deadline. When I packed my bag, Tyler approached with 2 coffees. We should talk. About what? Are you angry that I received more recognition? If so, say it. Don't risk the project. Did you request the $1,200 charge? His eyes flickered. That was the company's decision. You had nothing to do with it? Of course not. Don't accuse me. Then I have no personal problem with you either. I'm following the workflow. If you need assistance, submit a written request and identify the exact material. His face darkened. The client wants a plain English explanation. The full technical chain is documented in the repository. You only need to translate the equations into language business users understand. He opened his mouth and closed it. Good night, I said. Outside, a veteran engineer named Paul texted me, bold move. Be careful. Tyler plays dirty. I knew. The next morning, 17 unread emails waited for me. At the top was a department-wide message Mark had sent at 2:06 a.m. Subject: Work conduct and team cooperation. Noah Bennett. The email accused me of refusing assignments, withholding critical materials, and damaging the team environment. It said the conduct would be placed in my annual performance file. Colleagues from other departments had forwarded it with private questions. What happened? Are you okay? Do you need a witness? At 10, Mark called a department meeting. Noah, stand up. 20 people watched me. Explain why you refused to cooperate yesterday. I did not refuse. The documentation and code are in the repository. Tyler has access. Mark gave a sharp laugh. The technical document is full of formulas. The client needs someone to explain it. Then send me to the client. I have handled every technical conversation so far. Tyler interrupted. George Wilson already doubts our plan because of the way Noah presented it last week. Sending him again will make things worse. George identified a compatibility problem because I explained the model accurately, I said. Discovering the problem now gives us time to fix it. Hiding it would create a larger failure later. Mark tapped the table. Enough. The client wants a readable document this afternoon. How do we deliver it? Tyler answered quickly. Noah writes it. I present it. Mark looked at me. You heard him. A business-readable explanation will take at least 2 days. The model depends on 3 data sources, 2 cross-validation layers, and a separate calibration utility. They need it today. Then I can't produce a responsible version. You said the documentation was complete. The engineering documentation is complete. A technical document for developers and an executive explanation for non-technical stakeholders are different deliverables. The room went silent. Mark narrowed his eyes. You are playing word games. Stay here until it's done. Everyone left. I opened a blank document titled Plain Language Model Explanation. Then I stared at it. I could write it. That was not the question. For 2 years, I had accepted the promise that recognition would come later. Tyler became team lead. I received no raise. He submitted my architecture for an internal award. He placed his name first on a patent disclosure for code I designed. Now the company wanted one final clean document so he could collect one final round of praise. The disciplinary notice lay folded in my drawer. I closed the blank file and messaged a recruiter named Rachel Kim who had contacted me the previous month. Is the senior modeling role still open? She answered immediately, yes. Are you ready to talk? I am. I can schedule an interview next week. Tyler entered with another coffee. Don't turn this into a war. The project helps everyone. Once things calm down, I'll ask Mark to reduce the charge. Where were you when I wrote the code? His smile disappeared. Where were you when I visited 6 client sites? Where were you when I fixed production defects at 3 a.m? I managed the project. Then manage it now. He stood. The work belongs to the company. You were paid to do it. Correct. The work is in the company repository. The project owner can use it. You know the documentation isn't enough. Then the project owner should understand the project he claims to own. His voice rose. Don't push me. I picked up my bag. Submit a formal request if you need support. I walked out while coworkers watched from the hallway behind me. Tyler shouted, "This isn't over." In the elevator, I leaned against the wall and released a breath I felt I had held for 2 years. I stood outside the building and smoked my first cigarette in 6 months. My phone vibrated continuously, 6 calls from Tyler, 3 from Mark, 2 from Karen. I answered none. Tyler posted on the internal social feed, "Skill without character is worthless. Teams fail when selfish people refuse to cooperate." Several employees responded with supportive cliches. "Stay positive, real leaders rise above negativity." I saved screenshots. At2. I returned. My account had been locked. I could not access the repository, email, or internal messaging. Karen approached with an uncomfortable expression. "Mark has temporarily suspended your system's access. We need you to complete a handoff of all project materials to Tyler." How do I perform a handoff without access? You can use a shared account. Is the company terminating me? She did not answer. Her silence did. When a formal process begins, I will hand over every company record required. Until then, I will not work through a shared credential. That violates security policy and destroys the audit trail. Please don't make this harder. I'm not. The company is asking me to break the same rules it claims I violated. Mark summoned me again. He was on the phone when I arrived. If he refuses, involve legal. We'll see how long he refuses then. He hung up. Your attitude has moved beyond poor teamwork. The company can require full handoff before separation. Refusal may justify termination for cause without severance. I have not refused. Issue a formal written handoff notice, identify the records, restore read-only access under my account, and I will complete it. I will not use a shared password. Still lecturing me about process? Fine. Today, by close of business, deliver everything to Tyler or you will be suspended. Put it in writing and I'll acknowledge receipt. He stared at me. You think you're indispensable? Tyler is with the client now. They are satisfied with the existing material. Excellent. Then you don't need me. At 5, the project channel erupted. Tyler posted a voice message from the client site. George reviewed the package and says it doesn't match the logic Noah demonstrated last week. Several key controls are missing. He refuses to approve the milestone unless Noah explains it personally. Mark responded, "What do you mean?" Tyler sent another message, his voice strained. George says the cross-validation layer Noah described isn't in our document. Everyone understood Tyler could copy my slides and merge my code, but he could not reproduce the reasoning. Mark tagged me twice. Noah, come to my office. Noah, acknowledge this message. I remained silent. 3 minutes later, Tyler called. Come to the client site now. George asked for you. You're the owner. You brought the documents. You said the meeting was going well. This isn't the time. Did you document the cross-validation layer? Silence. Why can't I reproduce it from your technical notes? He demanded. Did you hide part of the model? I laughed. No. The project code depends on a calibration component stored in the approved research sandbox. Security policy requires a separate service account. The dependency is listed in the architecture diagram you presented as your own. You never requested access because you never read the diagram. The source story described a local-only model, but in an American corporate environment, hiding company work would expose Noah to legitimate discipline. The localized reality was cleaner, nothing had been withheld. Tyler simply did not understand the documented system or follow access procedures. You knew this would happen, Tyler said. I knew you didn't know what you claimed to know. He ended the call. The open office was silent around me. At 5:20, Mark came to my desk. Come with me. George is waiting. I'm suspended and my credentials are revoked. I cannot represent the company to a client. I can reverse the suspension. The $1,200 repayment demand also identifies me as a confidentiality risk. Sending me to the client would contradict the company's written position. For the first time, panic showed in his eyes. Stop playing games. If this milestone fails, the consequences will be serious. For Tyler. He is the owner. Your job is to hold him accountable, not ask me to erase the evidence of his incompetence. Mark left without answering. 5 minutes later, Karen hurried over. The company has withdrawn the repayment demand pending review. Your access is restored. Mark needs you at the client site immediately. I resign. She stared. I'll email the notice. Arrange a formal handoff, and I will cooperate fully. Linda caught my sleeve. Don't be impulsive. They finally gave in. Save the project, and you'll have leverage. I don't want leverage here. I want to leave. I packed my personal laptop, charger, and notebook. Company devices stayed on the desk. At Tyler's station, printed documents covered the surface. His screen displayed a message from George Wilson. Can your company actually deliver this, or should we find another vendor? I kept walking. Mark caught me near the elevators. Tyler will be disciplined. Just stabilize the project, and we can discuss everything else. Yesterday he had accused me in a department-wide email. Today everything was negotiable because he needed me. I removed his hand from my arm. Ask the project owner. Know the architecture diagram, repository paths, access requirements, and handoff notes are attached to my resignation. Legal can coordinate anything else. I will not perform more work until the company confirms in writing that the discipline was rescinded and compensates me for the withheld bonus. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Mark's face held anger, fear, and the helplessness of a man discovering that authority could not manufacture competence. As the elevator descended, I messaged Rachel. I can interview tomorrow, she replied, 10 a.m. I'll send the link outside. Sunlight poured through the lobby windows. Behind me were unfinished code, stolen credit, and 2 years of promises. None mattered as much as the fact that I would never again work until 3 a.m. so another man could place his name on the result. Mark texted, come back. We can fix everything. Tyler followed, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please come back. I deleted both messages and walked into the light. Leaving the building did not end the dispute. By the time I reached home, Karen had emailed a formal separation packet. It described my resignation as voluntary but reserved the company's right to investigate misconduct. The $1,200 demand had disappeared, though the suspended bonus remained unresolved. I forwarded everything to an employment attorney named Maya Collins. She reviewed the notice, the social posts, the repository history, and Mark's department-wide accusation. They cannot simply fine an employee because management is embarrassed, she said. A repayment demand must be supported by an actual loss and comply with state wage law. Withholding a contractual bonus after falsely attributing misconduct may also be actionable. I don't want a lawsuit if I can avoid one. Then we send a preservation letter and ask them to correct the record. Documentation gives you options. It does not obligate you to use all of them. The next morning, I interviewed with Meridian Analytics, a larger company known for enterprise risk systems. Rachel had warned me the panel would be demanding. They asked me to explain a failed model I had repaired, defend a trade-off between accuracy and interpretability, and identify weaknesses in a hypothetical client deployment. No one asked whether I was a team player as code for whether I accepted stolen credit. At the end, the chief technology officer, Sarah Patel, said, George Wilson recommended you personally. I blinked. From the client? He said you were the only person from Apex Data Systems who consistently gave him accurate answers, even when the answers complicated the sale. Accuracy had cost me at Apex. Here, it became a credential. Meridian offered me a senior architect role at $132,000, almost double my previous salary, with written authorship and invention assignment policies. I accepted after Maya reviewed the contract. Meanwhile, Apex's project stalled. George refused the milestone. The client issued a cure notice requiring a technically complete explanation within 10 business days. Tyler attempted 3 presentations. Each exposed another gap. Without me, the company finally examined the repository history. Every original commit carried my name. Tyler's authorship appeared only in later squash merges. Internal chat records showed him asking me basic questions hours before presentations he later described as his own work. Mark tried to characterize the issue as poor communication. The client disagreed. "Communication is not the problem," George said during an executive call. "Your company represented that Mr. Reed designed a system he cannot explain. That is a credibility problem." The statement reached Apex's chief operating officer. For the first time, Mark had to explain why the real architect had been disciplined while the false project owner remained in charge. Karen produced her notes. She had recorded that Tyler raised the confidentiality complaint and that Mark instructed HR to issue the repayment demand before any legal review. The investigation shifted direction. Tyler was placed on leave. Mark lost authority over the project. Apex's legal department contacted Maya to negotiate. Their first offer restored my bonus and removed the reprimand if I signed a broad release. I declined. Their second added severance and a neutral reference. Maya asked what I wanted most. A written correction sent to everyone who received Mark's email. It should state that I did not withhold company information, that my client explanation was within assigned duties, and that the repayment demand was withdrawn as unsupported. Anything else? My name restored to the patent disclosure and internal award submission. Apex resisted the patent correction until Maya showed the commit history and invention records. Then it agreed. The final settlement included the correction, bonus, severance, legal fees, and a mutual non-disparagement clause that did not prevent truthful testimony. At Meridian, I started 2 weeks later. On my first day, Sarah introduced me to the team. "Noah built the cross-validation architecture George Wilson has been talking about," she said. "He will lead our model governance program." My name appeared on the slide. IT was a small thing and not small at all. The work before the credit. I joined Apex Data Systems 2 years before Tyler arrived. The company occupied 3 floors of a glass office building and described itself as a place where talent mattered more than titles. During orientation, a vice president said, "The best idea wins." I believed him because I wanted to. My first project involved repairing a reporting system that produced different totals depending on which screen a manager opened. The work was unglamorous. I traced thousands of inconsistent records, rebuilt validation rules, and documented decisions everyone else had stopped questioning. When the system stabilized, Mark thanked the team in a department meeting. He did not mention my name. I told myself recognition would come with larger work. IT did, briefly. 2 strong performance reviews followed. Clients asked for me on technical calls because I explained risks without making them feel foolish. Junior engineers came to my desk when designs confused them. I became the person who knew where old assumptions were hidden. That reputation made me valuable and easy to exploit. Tyler arrived from a consulting firm with a polished resume and the competence to speak before understanding. Mark liked him immediately. Tyler summarized complicated issues in executive language and never let uncertainty show on his face. At first, I admired the skill. He asked me to review his documents and called the help mentoring. He invited me to planning meetings, then presented my suggestions as conclusions the group had reached together. Each incident was small enough to excuse. "I assumed everyone knew it came from you," he said when I challenged him once. "Then say it next time." "Of course." "Next time," he said. Noah and I discussed this. After I had done all the analysis. The time after that, he said, the team developed an approach. My name slowly disappeared into collective nouns. The major client project gave the pattern room to grow. Apex sold the client a platform that would predict operational failures across hundreds of sites. Sales promised fast deployment. The contract required integration with old systems, clear explanations for audit teams, and performance testing before payment milestones. Tyler was named project owner because he had executive presence. I was named senior engineer because I had to make the promise work. During the first week, the requirements were a collection of slogans: intelligent insights, seamless compatibility, real-time decisions. None defined what data existed or what decisions the client needed. I interviewed plant managers, maintenance teams, and the client's information security group. I learned which failures cost money, which alerts operators ignored, and which data arrived too late to matter. The model emerged from those conversations. IT did not require mysterious mathematics. It required careful definitions, clean history, and honest limits. We built one layer to identify unusual patterns and another to test whether those patterns had predicted real incidents in the past. The cross-validation method prevented the team from praising a model that succeeded only on data it had already seen. Tyler called the details too technical for leadership. Then he used the resulting performance numbers in every presentation. For 3 months, I worked nights because the schedule had been designed around sales promises rather than engineering reality. I traveled to 6 locations. At one plant, the network room flooded during a storm, and I spent 10 hours helping restore data access. Tyler arrived the next morning for the customer update and said, "My team worked through the night." He did not lie exactly. He stood close enough to the truth to benefit from it. George Wilson, the client's lead architect, noticed the difference between us. He sent questions directly to me. Tyler began insisting that all responses pass through him. "We need one voice," he said. The one voice used my words. I kept records without planning a confrontation. I saved design drafts, meeting notes, approval messages, and repository history because good engineering required traceability. Those same records later protected me. The authorized client explanation. The allegation against me depended on turning normal contracted work into misconduct. The master services agreement required Apex to demonstrate model logic to designated client personnel. George was listed as an authorized technical reviewer. The data I showed him contained no customer records, source code, trade secrets from another project, or personal information. I used synthetic examples inside a secure client session. The purpose was to test compatibility before deployment. Tyler knew because he assigned me to the meeting and approved the appendix. When George identified a mismatch, I explained why the model expected a different time format. We agreed on a conversion layer. The discussion prevented a failure that would otherwise have appeared during launch. Afterward, George emailed Tyler and Mark. Noah's explanation resolved the issue. "Please include him in the validation workshop." Tyler forwarded the message to Mark with a new note. Noah went deeper than authorized. "We should control the narrative." That email became Exhibit 7 in the internal investigation. Before the discipline, no one from information security interviewed me. No attorney reviewed the contract. HR relied on a complaint written by Tyler and approved by Mark. The $1,200 amount had no calculation behind it. Karen later admitted Mark selected it because it would feel serious without triggering the executive approval required for a larger payroll deduction. State law did not permit Apex to collect disputed business losses through wages without authorization and legal basis. The company tried to avoid the issue by calling it reimbursement and asking me to sign. My refusal mattered. Had I signed carelessly, Apex still might not have gained a valid claim, but the document would have complicated the fight. Maya Collins, the employment attorney, explained this during our first meeting. "Companies often rely on the speed of humiliation," she said. "They put paper in front of someone while coworkers watch and hope. Embarrassment does the work law cannot." She asked me to describe the client meeting without conclusions. When I finished, she requested the contract section, the email assigning me, and the security session record. "This is not a confidentiality case," she said. "It looks like retaliation and authorship concealment wearing a confidentiality label." Her wording gave shape to what I felt. The meeting Mark wanted TOCONTROL. When Mark demanded the core derivation document, he expected the old version of me. That version would have worked overnight, handed over the file, and hoped competence eventually produced fairness. Instead, I asked who owned the project. Mark's anger revealed the contradiction. If Tyler was the project owner, Tyler should understand and present the system. If I alone could produce the essential explanation, punishing me while assigning ownership to Tyler was operationally dishonest. "This is not the time for ego," Mark said. "I agree. The approved responsibility matrix names Tyler. You wrote the document. Then the record should reflect that." He leaned across his desk. "You think one document makes you indispensable?" "No. I think clear ownership makes the company accountable." I offered to upload existing materials to the approved repository after HR confirmed my access and responsibilities in writing. I would not send files to a private account, create an undocumented version, or bypass the same process they claimed I violated. Mark called that refusal. I called it compliance. His department-wide email accused me of withholding information before I had missed any assigned deadline. That premature accusation became another record of retaliation. Coworkers read it differently than he expected. Several had watched Tyler receive credit for their work too. One engineer, Priya, saved a message where Tyler asked her to remove her name from a performance test because executive decks need simple ownership. Another designer had drafts showing Tyler copied her workflow diagram. They did not immediately revolt. Real workplaces are rarely that dramatic. People had rent, insurance, and families. They contacted Maya quietly and preserved records. The problem expanded from my dispute into a pattern. The repository audit. Apex's legal department ordered a repository audit after George refused the milestone. The audit reconstructed authorship more accurately than any presentation slide. My account created the initial architecture branch. My commits introduced the validation framework, error handling, model monitoring, and compatibility layer. Tyler's account performed administrative merges and modified titles. A squash merge changed the visible author on one summary commit, but the underlying branch, review comments, and signed build logs remained. The audit also identified a dangerous practice. Tyler occasionally downloaded code to a personal device before presenting it as his work. That violated policy far more clearly than my authorized client explanation. He claimed he needed offline access while traveling. The security team found no approved exception. Mark had known about the downloads and told security not to slow the project with bureaucracy. The hypocrisy mattered because Mark had framed discipline as devotion to policy. Apex did not terminate them immediately. Legal placed both on leave and interviewed employees. That slower process protected everyone, including Tyler, from decisions based solely on anger. I appreciated the difference even while I wanted faster vindication. Maya reminded me that due process was not a gift reserved for innocent people. You wanted an investigation before discipline, she said. The same principle applies now. She was right. The final audit attributed 82% of substantive engineering contributions to me, 11% to 3 other engineers, and less than 2% to Tyler. The remaining work involved automation and vendor components. Numbers could not measure leadership fully, but they destroyed the claim that Tyler had built the core system. The internal award submission listed him as sole architect. The patent disclosure listed him and Mark. Both were corrected. Authenticity at the client. George's refusal to accept the milestone was not personal loyalty to me. He had a duty to his company. Apex represented that Tyler could support the model. During the validation call, Tyler repeated phrases from my documents without understanding their conditions. George asked how the model avoided learning from future information during testing. Tyler answered, "The system uses industry standard separation." George asked which time boundary controlled the separation. Tyler said he would follow up. George then asked how false alerts were weighted across high-risk and low-risk facilities. Tyler read a number from the slide but could not explain where it came from. The client's compliance officer ended the session. We cannot approve a system whose designated owner cannot explain its validation. Mark accused George of changing requirements. George sent the original contract language. The next executive call included Apex's chief operating officer, general counsel, and chief technology officer. George stated the issue clearly. Your company may assign personnel however it wants. We care that the person represented as architect can defend the design. Right now, the records suggest Apex removed the actual architect, punished him for performing contracted work, and replaced him with someone using his materials. That creates technical and governance risk. No one could reduce the problem to an unhappy employee after that. The settlement negotiation. Apex's first settlement proposal focused on silenced. IT offered to withdraw the $1,200 demand, restore my bonus, and remove the reprimand if I released all claims, and agreed not to discuss the matter with clients or employees. Maya read the proposal and said, "They are offering to stop doing what they should not have done in exchange for your silence." We declined. The second offer added 8 weeks of severance and a neutral employment reference. We declined again. I did not expect to become wealthy. I wanted correction proportional to the harm. My reputation inside Apex had been damaged by a department-wide email. The correction had to reach the same audience. My authorship had been removed from corporate and legal records. It had to be restored there. The bonus had been suspended without basis. It had to be paid. My legal fees existed because Apex skipped investigation. It had to contribute to them. The company resisted a written admission. Maya proposed precise language that stated facts without forcing executives to confess motives. After review, Apex sent the following correction. The prior communication concerning Noah Bennett's alleged withholding of project information was issued before completion of review. The review found that Mr. Bennett's client explanation was within his assigned responsibilities and that he did not improperly withhold company materials. Project authorship and invention records have been corrected to reflect documented contributions. The email did not call Mark dishonest or Tyler a thief. IT gave people the truth needed to judge. My settlement also protected my ability to testify truthfully, respond to legal process, and discuss general workplace experiences without disclosing client secrets. Non-disparagement could not become another secrecy weapon. Karen asked to speak with me after signing. I should have paused the discipline, she said. Mark told me the client was threatening immediate loss and that legal had approved the amount. I did not verify either statement. Why not? Because he was a director and you were one employee in a room full of people waiting for a decision. Her honesty was uncomfortable. What changes now? I asked. She showed me a revised process requiring legal review for employee reimbursement demands, documented evidence, an opportunity to respond before broad communications, and separation between a complainant and final decision-maker. I cannot undo your mourning, she said. I can make it harder to repeat. I accepted the apology without pretending. Trust returned instantly. The clean room at Meridian. When Meridian Analytics considered bidding on the client's replacement project, Sarah Patel established a clean room process. I could use my general skill and public knowledge. I could not use Apex source code, confidential pricing, internal documents, or client information obtained outside authorized new interviews. Meridian created a new repository before I joined. A separate team documented public requirements. Counsel reviewed my access. Every design decision linked to a current client statement or independently generated analysis. The process protected Apex, Meridian, the client, and me. It also demonstrated a difference in culture. Apex leadership treated process as an obstacle until process could be used against someone. At Meridian, process protected good work from suspicion. During the first design workshop, a junior engineer named Leah proposed a simpler monitoring method than mine. Her idea was better for the client's new environment. I said so in the room. The meeting notes listed Leah as proposer. Afterward, she thanked me. For what? For not saying the team came up with it. The sentence hurt because it sounded ordinary. I began adding an authorship section to every major document. Not to encourage ego, but to preserve accountability. Reviewers needed to know whom to ask. Contributors deserved an accurate record. Meridian won the contract after a competitive process. The client did not hire us as revenge against Apex. It selected the proposal with clearer governance, realistic risk, and qualified ownership. That distinction allowed me to feel proud without becoming dependent on another company's failure. What happened to the team? Apex reorganized the project division. Mark lost his director title and later resigned. Public records did not reveal whether he was forced out. Former coworkers said he joined a smaller vendor and became more cautious about written instructions. Tyler returned from leave after the investigation found serious attribution and security violations but not enough evidence for certain allegations employees assumed. Apex placed him in an individual contributor role with no ownership authority. He left within months. Some people complained that consequences were too small. I understood the frustration. Yet accountability was not always public ruin. His advancement stopped. His record no longer rested on my work. Teams could choose not to trust him. Priya became technical lead at Apex after cooperating with the audit. She instituted peer review requirements and rotating presentation roles. Evan, the junior engineer who first messaged me, moved to Meridian a year later through an ordinary hiring process. During his interview, We disclosed our previous working relationship and removed me from the final compensation decision. He thrived. Karen became head of employee relations, an outcome that surprised me until Maya explained that organizations sometimes improve when people who understand a failure are required to repair it. The client recovered its project after delays. It paid more than planned but received a system with better documentation and independent validation. No company disappeared. Hundreds of employees continued working. The consequences fit the actual failures rather than a fantasy of total destruction. The conversation with Tyler. When Tyler waited outside Meridian, I considered walking past. I stopped because I wanted to know whether he understood. He began with pressure. Mark wanted a single owner. Executives rewarded confidence. The client needed reassurance. Tyler believed a promotion would allow him to credit me later. Each explanation placed the real decision one step away from him. You changed my name on the deck, I said. Mark wanted simplicity. You submitted yourself as sole inventor. I thought managers were included automatically. You reported an authorized client meeting as misconduct. He looked down. I was afraid you would tell George the First couldn't manage the project. At last, a sentence with ownership. You were afraid the truth would cost you status. Yes. So you tried to make it cost me income and reputation instead. Yes. He apologized. I believed he regretted the result. I did not know whether he had changed enough to resist the next opportunity that was no longer my responsibility. What can I do? He asked. Use accurate authorship wherever you work next. Correct people when they give you credit that is not yours. Do it before anyone catches you. Will you tell employers I changed? I will answer lawful questions truthfully. Your future record has to speak for itself. He nodded. We parted without forgiveness. Theater. The price of Stying. The $1,200 demand remained the number people remembered, but money was only the visible price. Staying would have required me to accept that my name could disappear whenever leadership preferred a cleaner story. It would have required me to train Tyler to explain work he claimed, rescue Mark from decisions he made, and sign a document validating punishment for doing my job. The real cost was self-erasure. Leaving carried costs too. Health insurance changed. Income paused. References felt uncertain. I worried Apex would call me difficult. Maya helped negotiate a clear reference, and Meridian evaluated records rather than gossip. For several weeks, I woke before dawn expecting project alerts. My body had learned that every silence concealed a problem. I should fix. At Meridian, Sarah once found me answering messages at midnight. Is production down? She asked. No. Is a customer unsafe? No. Then sleep. The instruction felt almost irresponsible. It took months to understand that competent work did not require permanent emergency. I began leaving the office at reasonable hours. I took a weekend trip without a laptop. I stopped apologizing before asking that my name remain on documents I wrote. Those changes were less dramatic than the client confrontation and more important. Authorship ASGOVERNANCE. At Meridian, we created contribution records for major projects. The record did not rank human worth. It listed who designed, reviewed, tested, approved, and maintained each component. When something failed, the team knew whom to involve. When something succeeded, recognition had evidence. Executives initially worried the practice would encourage territorial behavior. The opposite happened. People shared more freely because sharing no longer meant disappearing. Leah's monitoring design became a company standard. Her name remained attached. Another engineer improved it and received separate credit. The work became collective without becoming anonymous. I presented the process at an industry conference. During questions, a manager asked, "Isn't insisting on names bad for teamwork?" "Only if teamwork requires inaccurate records," I answered. Credit and accountability are the same map viewed from different directions. George sat in the audience. Afterward, he shook my hand. That should have been obvious to Apex. It should have been obvious to me earlier too. I had accepted small erasures long before the large one. The lesson was not to fight for applause in every room. It was to notice when repeated invisibility became a control system. The card from the junior engineer. When Meridian promoted me to principal architect, the team gave me a card. Leah wrote, "Thank you for giving credit in the room." Not only afterward. Evan wrote, "Thank you for making questions safe." Sarah wrote, "Now take a vacation." I kept the card beside my original Apex notebook. The notebook contained the first model sketches, client questions, and Tyler's promise that names did not matter. Names did matter, not because a title page determined value, but because records shaped opportunities. The person listed as owner received promotions, authority, and trust. The person hidden under supporting team received more invisible work. Accurate credit was not vanity. It was economic fairness. I sometimes thought about the moment Karen placed the paper on my desk. Around us, keyboards stopped. Everyone waited to see whether I would submit, explode, or plead. I did none of those things. I asked for specifics. That question began the unraveling. The company had prepared for emotion. It was less prepared for records. And later leadership training. I told managers, when an employee asks what evidence supports a decision, the answer cannot be authority. Some nodded. Some looked uncomfortable. Discomfort was useful. The last return to APEX 2 years after I left, Apex invited me to speak at an internal engineering ethics forum. My first instinct was refusal. Maya reviewed the invitation. It came from Karen and Priya, not former executives. The topic was authorship, retaliation, and client transparency. Compensation was standard, and no agreement limited what I could say. I accepted. Walking through the lobby felt like entering a photograph. The security desk had moved. The coffee shop had changed. My old access badge would not have opened anything that pleased me. The conference room held engineers, managers, HR staff, and legal counsel. I did not retell the dispute as personal revenge. I described the control failures. A complaint was accepted without verifying contract duties. The complainant influenced the discipline. Broad reputational harm occurred before investigation. Authorship records conflicted with executive claims. The company tried to resolve risk through pressure on the person who understood the system. Then I described the reforms. During questions, a young engineer asked whether I regretted leaving. "No," I said. "But I am glad the company chose to learn after I left." Priya showed me the current project boards. Contributors were listed. Technical owners rotated based on actual scope. Employee deductions required legal review and written authorization. The system was not perfect. No system is. It was better. At my former desk, another engineer had placed a plant beside the monitor. I did not feel displaced. The space had never been the proof of my work. On the way out, Karen handed me a sealed envelope. Inside was the original disciplinary notice marked void and a copy of the correction email. "For your records," she said. I considered throwing them away. Instead, I placed them in the same archive as the settlement. Evidence did not need daily attention to remain true. I walked through the doors without anyone trying to stop me. This time, leaving was not escape. It was simply the end of a visit. Chapter 5. A month later, George invited Meridian to bid on the project Apex had failed to rescue. Conflict rules prevented me from using Apex's confidential materials, so Meridian built a clean proposal from the client's published requirements and new technical interviews. My knowledge of the business problem helped, but every design decision was documented independently. Sarah insisted on the separation. "We win because our work is better, not because you carry files out of an old employer." That sentence told me I had chosen the right company. We presented to George and 12 stakeholders. I explained not only how the model worked but where it could fail, what monitoring it required, and which assumptions the client needed to own. Afterward, George said, "This is the first meeting in 6 months where nobody tried to hide risk from me." Meridian won the contract. Apex did not collapse. Companies rarely receive cinematic punishment. They reorganize, issue statements, and continue. But consequences arrived in quieter forms. The division missed its annual target. Mark was demoted and later resigned. Tyler returned from leave to a non-management role, then left after no team wanted him. Karen became head of employee relations after cooperating with the investigation and rewriting the disciplinary process. One evening, Tyler waited outside Meridian's building. "I only want to talk," he said. I kept several feet between us. "Talk." I was under pressure. Mark wanted one person accountable for the client concern. I thought if I gave him your name, he would protect the project and my promotion. He did. Until he needed someone else. Tyler looked down. I know I took too much credit. You took all of it. I can apologize publicly. The company already corrected the record. Then what do you want? The question revealed that he still understood accountability as a transaction. Nothing from you. You don't want me to suffer? Your career is your responsibility. I wanted my work and reputation restored. They are. I walked away. For years, I had imagined vindication as a room full of people admitting I was right. Real vindication felt quieter. It was opening a repository where authorship remained intact. It was leaving the office before sunset because the schedule was realistic. It was hearing a manager say, "I don't know Noah, what do you think?" without pretending my answer belonged to him. 6 months after I left Apex, Meridian promoted me to principal architect. At the announcement, Sarah handed me a printed card signed by the team. One message from a junior engineer read, "Thank you for giving credit in the room." Not only afterward, I kept that card. The $1,200 demand that started everything became almost absurd in retrospect. Apex had tried to take a month's financial security from me while asking for a model worth millions. They believed pressure would make me hand over one more invisible piece of myself. Instead, it taught me the exact price of staying. I no longer worked for people who called theft teamwork, retaliation policy, or obedience character. When my phone occasionally surfaced an old photograph of the Apex office, I did not feel anger. I remembered the unfinished water on my desk and the cookies in the drawer, and I hoped the engineers who remained learned to protect their names. Then I returned to my work no one could present as his own without the history proving otherwise. Epilogue. The name on the SLID. 3 years after the Apex dispute, Meridian prepared a proposal for a statewide infrastructure program. The project was larger than anything I had led before. It involved public agencies, private operators, union teams, and independent auditors. The technical work mattered, but governance mattered more. Every decision needed a traceable owner and a documented reviewer. At the kickoff, Sarah displayed the contribution matrix. My name appeared beside program architecture. Leah's appeared beside monitoring design. Evan owned integration testing. A new project manager named Sophia Ramirez owned schedule coordination and stakeholder communication. Sophia looked at the slide and said, "This is unusually specific." "Specificity prevents future mythology," I answered. She smiled. "I have worked on projects with plenty of mythology." During the first month, my proposed architecture failed an important stress test. Leah identified the weakness. Old reflexes surfaced. I wanted to explain why my original reasoning had been understandable. I wanted to protect the authority that came with my title. Then I remembered Tyler. "Leah found a critical flaw in my design," I said at the executive review. "Her alternative passed the test. We are adopting it." No one thought less of me. The client thought more of the team. Afterward, Leah said, "You didn't have to say it was your flaw." Yes, I did. Ownership is not only for success. That was the part of accurate credit I had learned later. A name on a slide brought recognition and responsibility together. Separating them created the culture that harmed me at Apex. The project launched successfully 18 months later. At the public presentation, the agency director thanked Meridian's team by role. Sophia coordinated the list and verified every name before publication. When mine was announced, I applauded the others first. The gesture was not false modesty. I knew exactly what I had contributed. Because the record was accurate, generosity felt safe. That evening, the team gathered at a small restaurant. Sarah handed me a framed print of the first contribution matrix. "You are turning project administration into sentimental art," I said. "Leadership has softened you." "Unlikely." Evan raised a glass. "To receipts." Leah corrected him. "To repository history." Sophia added, "To never paying $1,200 for doing your job." We laughed. The old number had become a shared story, but I no longer told it as the moment a company almost took money from me. I told it as the moment I noticed how much more I had already surrendered. After dinner, I walked toward the train station. My phone showed an email from a university student asking for advice. He had contributed to a laboratory project, but a senior researcher planned to submit the paper without his name. I could not determine the facts from one message. I replied with questions: what records existed, what contribution standards governed the project, had he raised the issue in writing, did the university have an ombuds office? I did not tell him to quit dramatically or confront anyone without preparation. I gave him options and encouraged independent advice. Experience had taught me that courage and documentation worked best together. A week later, he wrote back. The Ombuds office helped correct the author list before submission. No scandal. No public collapse. A fair record created early. That outcome pleased me more than another story of revenge would have. At home, I kept 3 items in one drawer: the voided disciplinary notice, the corrected patent disclosure, and the team card from my Meridian promotion. The first documented what someone tried to make me accept, the second documented what the evidence restored. The third documented the culture I helped build afterward. One rainy Saturday, I considered whether to keep the old papers. I scanned them into an encrypted archive and shredded the originals except for the card. Paper fibers fell into the bin. The history did not disappear. It simply stopped occupying physical space. On Monday, I entered a conference room where Sophia was presenting the next program plan. A title slide appeared: Program Lead, Sophia Ramirez, Architecture, Noah Bennett, Monitoring, Leah Chen, Integration, Evan Brooks. The names were ordinary, visible, and correct. No one had to fight for them. Sophia finished the presentation and asked, questions? I raised one about schedule risk. Leah challenged an assumption. Evan suggested a test. The room moved into work without anyone needing to defend ownership through volume. For a moment, I remembered Tyler saying names did not matter. He had been wrong in the way people are wrong when the system consistently displays their own name. Names mattered until the record was fair. Then the team could focus on the work. At the end of the meeting, a junior analyst remained behind. Mr. Bennett, she said, I built the cost model on slide 14. Sophia told me to add my name to the appendix. Is that really necessary? Did you build it? Yes. Then your name is part of the documentation. She nodded, still uncertain. It feels like bragging. Accuracy is not bragging. She smiled and returned to her desk. I stood alone in the conference room after the lights dimmed automatically. Years earlier, I had walked out of Mark's office after being told authorship was irrelevant and obedience was policy. I had believed leaving would cost me the career I had built. Instead, leaving allowed me to build a career where the record matched reality. The difference appeared in small places: a name in an appendix, an engineer credited aloud, a manager admitting a flaw, an employee allowed to question evidence before discipline. Those details did not make exciting headlines. They made good work possible. I gathered my notebook and headed for the door. No core file was hidden in my bag. No company depended on a secret only I possessed. The system was documented, reviewed, and shared responsibly. That was not a loss of power. It was proof that I had learned to lead without recreating the conditions that once made me indispensable and invisible at the same time. Final record: a year after the statewide program launched, the client audited Meridian's governance process. The auditor selected 10 decisions at random and traced each one from meeting note to design review, test result, approval, and deployment. Every name matched the work performed. The finding appeared in a single sentence: contribution and decision records were complete, accurate, and consistently maintained. No one outside the project considered that sentence dramatic. Accuracy had once been treated as a threat because it exposed the distance between Tyler's title and my labor. At Meridian, accuracy was infrastructure. It protected junior employees, managers, clients, and the company itself. After the audit, Sarah asked me to mentor a new group of technical leads. I began the first session with the voided apex notice on the screen. This document accused an employee before the company established facts, I said. Our job is not to avoid every conflict. Our job is to make sure authority never replaces evidence. We discussed attribution, discipline, client transparency, and the danger of making one person secretly indispensable. The most experienced manager in the room admitted that he often removed contributor names to make slides cleaner. Clean for whom? A junior lead asked. He changed the practice the next day. That small correction stayed with me. Systems improved when someone felt safe enough to ask the obvious question. At the end of the session, I returned to my office and opened the current project dashboard. Work continued across time zones. Each component showed an owner, reviewer, backup, and support plan. Nothing depended on an undocumented file hidden in one person's memory. I closed the old Apex archive. The dispute had restored my name, but its deeper lesson was not about becoming famous inside a company. It was about refusing arrangements that demanded invisible responsibility without visible authority. I turned off the conference room light and walked out with my notebook under one arm. The hall was quiet. No security guard stopped me. No director called me back for one final rescue. The work continued behind me because it belonged to a real team. My name remained exactly where it belonged, no larger than the truth, and no smaller. The lesson followed me into every review, every meeting, and every decision about another person's work. I asked for evidence before judgment and named contributors before executives could simplify them away. Junior engineers learned that questions were not disloyal and accurate records were not acts of ego. Managers learned that responsibility without authority creates fear, while authority without accountability creates abuse. Clients received honest limits instead of confident promises borrowed from someone else's expertise. No project became safer because one person stayed silent, invisible, and permanently available for rescue. We built backups, shared knowledge, and left a clear trail from every claim to its source. The culture changed through repeated ordinary choices rather than one dramatic correction. I kept choosing the truth before convenience, especially when convenience would have favored me. That was how the name on the slide became governance instead of vanity. Every correction made early spared someone else the humiliation of proving obvious work under hostile scrutiny. Accurate minutes gave quiet employees a voice when competence and hierarchy tried to rewrite the room. Fair review required patience, but patience proved cheaper than discipline issued quickly and defended for pride. Leadership meant admitting uncertainty before another person paid the price for a manager's convenient certainty. The best systems made honesty routine, so courage was not required for every ordinary act. I carried that standard forward, knowing invisible labor becomes visible when records remain faithful to reality. Accuracy endured. For more exciting content, please subscribe and follow us.